The United States came out of World War II dominant.
That there is an empire, that the empire is going to decline.
BRICS is the new dominant economic powerhouse center.
Richard Wolff thunders that something insane just happened as the empire's mask is ripped away, revealing the painful truth beneath. Because BRICS has surged past the G7 and breaking the spine of a system built on control and obedience. And now America staggers like a wounded giant, bleeding power, trust, and the illusion of control.
Doing international trade on their own, out from under the domination of the United States.
And the world just flipped on its head. Richard Wolff has been warning about cracks in the global order for years, but now the numbers are undeniable. The BRICS economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have officially overtaken the G7 in global output.
They are not the dominant center anymore. It's not this or that tariff. It's the uncertainty.
35% of global production now comes from BRICS, while the once all-powerful G7 sits at 28%. That's not a minor adjustment, it's a historic shift. Wolff calls it the single most important economic moment since World War II, and it's hard to disagree. The balance of power isn't shifting anymore. It is already shifted.
But what you're doing is diminishing the capability of the United States to hold on at a time when its footprint in the world is shrinking.
What makes this moment explosive is how the US is responding. Trump's tariff crusade meant to project strength increasingly looks like a self-inflicted wound. Wolff compared Trump's threats toward India to a mouse hitting an elephant. The image says it all. America squeaks loudly, but giants like India barely notice. For decades, Washington could strong-arm weaker economies. Today, those same tactics reek of desperation. Instead of intimidating rivals, tariffs now reveal how much U.S. leverage has evaporated.
This pattern, rise of the BRICS, decline of the G7, is going to change anytime soon.
The consequences are immediate. Global companies no longer see the U.S. as a reliable partner. Tariffs can change overnight, rules can be shredded on a whim, and entire industries can be shut out for political theater. Faced with that instability, businesses diversify. They build supply chains elsewhere, invest in regions less likely to slam the door shut, and gradually detach from American technology. The ripple effects are massive. Not only are products shifting away from US markets, but critical innovation is moving too.
Into every empire, we're only the latest. Look at the British, how far they've fallen. We're in that process. So the problem with the trickle down is, yeah, there might be more jobs, but they're going to be created in China.
The credibility gap only widens. Washington spent years warning allies not to trust Chinese firms like Huawei, calling them threats to global security. Yet, it was US intelligence caught tapping Angela Merkel's phone. That hypocrisy lingers. The result is a loss of trust that no trade agreement can repair. America tried to isolate China, but ended up isolating itself. Wolff calls it the classic trap of arrogance. In trying to box others out, the US is discovering the world quietly, boxing it in.
You've got a working class here that is very shocked. No one prepared them. That's a flaw of this.
This dynamic came to a head in 2025. In April, Trump announced a global baseline tariff of 10% on over 185 countries. Overnight, global trade turned into a guessing game. By August, he doubled down with a 50% tariff on Indian imports. Wolff called it economic suicide. Instead of weakening India, Washington shoved one of the fastest growing economies directly into BRICS arms. India didn't shrink back, it pivoted with new confidence. A single policy move ended up alienating a key partner and gifting BRICS a major strategic win.
That they just crossed $1 trillion. That is the value of the trade among members of the BRICS. $1 trillion worth of trade.
That leads to Wolff's central warning. BRICS isn't a secondary alliance anymore. It is now the largest economic bloc on Earth. This isn't just a shift in GDP statistics, it's about leverage, influence, and who gets to write the rules of global trade. For decades, the G7 dictated terms to the developing world. Today, those nations are writing their own terms, and others are lining up to join them.
America is shooting itself in the foot.
Africa illustrates this clearly. Leaders across the continent aren't knocking on Washington's door for aid. They're shopping for offers. Need a port? A railway? They can compare proposals from the US, China, India, or even Russia, and pick whichever deal comes with the best financing and fastest results. That's bargaining power they never had under Western dominance. The result is a new marketplace of global influence, where the US is no longer the sole supplier.
Now it's 25%. Well, now it's 10%. Now it's 200%. This is impossible. What this does is negate what the whole tariff was supposed to do.
Tariffs accelerate this shift. Each time Washington raises one, foreign leaders gain an easy scapegoat. Gas prices rising, blame Trump. Inflation straining households, blame US tariffs. Factories struggling, blame America. Meanwhile, China and India play the long game, presenting themselves as champions of free trade and multilateral cooperation. Nations once branded protectionist now wave the globalization flag, while the US looks like the rogue state. The optics are brutal, and perception in geopolitics often becomes reality.
That the BRICS represent a challenge.
The danger is obvious. European elites risk looking more loyal to Washington than to their own citizens. Inflation, energy crises, and stagnant wages are fueling frustration on the ground. The conditions are ripe for political upheaval, possibly a surge of left-wing populism that breaks with the transatlantic consensus. Europe is betting on two horses at once, but in the process, it risks alienating its people and losing control of its political future. The inequality is staggering. At major corporations, CEOs take home thousands of times more than median workers. This isn't just inequality, it's mockery. And while America limps with 2% growth, China posts 5 to 8% consistently. It's like a runner jogging while another sprints, but still insisting they're in the lead.
But we are led by people who don't want to do that, because nobody wants to be the politician who has to explain to the people it's over.
Meanwhile, US politicians keep recycling the same hollow promise. We're going to bring back manufacturing. 9 presidents in a row have said it. None delivered. The factories never returned, but the slogan remains effective, keeping voters hooked on nostalgia. Wolff's point is blunt. America isn't just losing influence abroad, it's rotting inside. Tariffs and global blunders accelerate external decline, but the collapse of the middle class is the internal time bomb. No empire dominates while its citizens drown in insecurity.
Of what? Of a country that is in trouble and is turning on its friends because it can to save itself.
Today feels eerily similar. If Trump's tariffs spark stagflation or depression, the 2020s may echo the 1930s. But this time, Roosevelt may not arrive to save the system. Instead, BRICS could emerge as the bloc that thrives while the West struggles. Washington wouldn't negotiate with Beijing and New Delhi out of goodwill, but out of desperation. That isn't strategy, it's survival mode.
What they are interested in doing is becoming a part of a world economy that isn't anymore dominated by the US dollar.
Another pillar of US dominance is also cracking. the dollar's role as the world's safe haven. For decades, whenever crisis struck, investors fled into U.S. treasuries. It was automatic, the ultimate vote of confidence. But now, for the first time in living memory, investors are hedging elsewhere. Central banks are diversifying into gold, yuan, and regional currencies. Private funds are experimenting with BRICS-linked markets.
Well, Americans were a little naive. They indulged themselves in believing it would last forever. Well, it didn't.
The unthinkable is now being whispered in financial circles. The dollar and US debt are no longer risk-free. A split world economy is emerging, one orbiting Washington, the other orbiting BRICS. The safety net that underpinned American dominance is unraveling. Wolff is blunt. If you're betting on who comes out ahead, the odds tilt toward China. Not because the US disappears overnight, but because trust erodes slowly, then suddenly. Once that trust is gone, no patriotic speech or tariff can glue it back together.
Anti-American, as Mr. Trump casually likes to say, that's really not relevant to them.
Wolff ends with brutal irony. Donald Trump may be the best organizer the left has right now, not by design, but by destruction, by wrecking global trust, shredding trade stability, and alienating allies. Trump has achieved what activists could never do alone. He has forced people everywhere to question the system itself. The insane shift Wolff describes is not a distant threat. It is unfolding in real time. BRICS rising, US influence shrinking, allies hedging, and ordinary Americans crushed under inequality. Empires rarely fall with a single blow. They unravel piece by piece until one day the collapse feels sudden. Wolff's warning is clear. That day may be closer than anyone in Washington dares admit.